FuReel is about passion, it's about culture. It's not just about sharing a Chinese martial art, but it's about sharing the light at the end of my tunnel, and maybe this could be the light at the end of your tunnel, or you can just enjoy some really cool content, and this is FuReel. All right. Hi everyone, welcome to this episode of the FuReel Podcast. Today on the podcast, we are on a different platform to record this because of COVID-19 and the social distancing and whatnot. So on the podcast today, we have Sifu Gawain, of course, master and founder of Jhung Academy, aka my father, and Piers Akani. How would I describe Piers? Piers is a Tai Chi practitioner with us, and his son and daughter do play through with us as well. You've also heard Piers on a previous episode, probably in our very first few episodes of the podcast. So this is going to be good because now we don't have to be in the same location and arrange timing as such to record the podcast. So here we are. Let me unmute you all and you guys can greet everyone who's listening.
Hi everyone.
Hello, everybody.
All right, so today let's just check in. How are we feeling? Mad, sad, glad, scared? Who'd like to go first?
I will. I am anxious and excited. Probably 9 out of 10. Glad. 9 out of 10. Glad, grateful, feeling grateful and satisfied. Also 9 out of 10. Not mad, frustrated, or maybe a little frustrated, maybe 3 out of 10 in frustration. That's me.
I'm mostly feeling glad, a bit of scared from all the uncertainty around. And I find it's fluctuating a fair bit, actually. It feels like you're on a kind of choppy seas right now, lots of peaks and troughs. So right now, though, I'm feeling good. I'm happy to be here, happy to see familiar faces and have a talk with the outside world. Just as a heads up, in case it affects anything throughout the recording, my internet is 4G Optus, and it is not loving the fact that more people are at home using their phones and such than normal. So I may have weird freezes and not hear what people are saying, but that would explain that.
Yeah, cool. I think that's just part of it. That's all good. All right. I'm feeling, I think mostly glad today, but like Piers throughout the week, just feeling anxious and nervous and scared about the uncertainty of things happening. But right now, I'm pretty glad and excited to continue the podcast, even given the circumstances. I forgot to mention as part of my intro on the podcast, we talk about whilst we're practicing and teaching Kung Fu and Tai Chi, we talk about how it benefits our lives and the 3 parts to make us whole: the mind, body, and spirit. So today we're going to do just that. I guess we have 2 dads here and 3 dudes who practice Tai Chi and have kids who practice it as well. So my question is, given the circumstances of COVID-19 so far, how it's been impacting the world, and now it's reached Australia and Perth, how has it been for you guys in terms of life? Yo.
Well, first of all, I just wanted to also mention that both Pierce and I have wives that practice Tai Chi with us too, not just our kids. So both our households are Jing mowers. So it's probably quite unique, really. For me, for example, this morning, it's been extremely stressful. It's the extra vigilance around being clean. In the morning, our usual routine today is the last day of school for Isabella, our daughter. And as of today, she won't be returning to school, and William won't be going back to daycare. So as of tomorrow, I'm daddy daycare, and my wife, or Marianne, for those who don't know, will be heading out and earning our keep. She will be the sole income into our family, into our household, and she works 3 days a week on the front line at Women's Health and Family Services, looking after other mums and kids. So, oh gosh, it was stressful. I tried my best this morning. We had our class. I've done a couple of ULUs, not as many as I normally would. After dropping off Isabella at school, telling the school that today's her last day until things change with COVID-19. Went and had a chino. William's calling them Woolham chinos now. So they were baby chinos, now they're Woolham chinos. And I grabbed a coffee at our local coffee shop, and then we sat in the park and played, tried to be as normal as possible, and played on the swing. And then other kids arrived on push bikes with their dad, and suddenly we kind of realized we can't be next to each other on the swings, that we can't play on the play equipment together. So it's like us two dads were kind of navigating. He had 3 kids and I had Willem, and we're kind of just, without speaking about it, we're both watching, who's going next, and, try to keep our distance so the kids can keep their distance as well. And then, so there's that stress, and then there's the stress of, all right, before we get in the house, what are we going to do? So we've adopted in our household that when we return from an outing, we strip down outside before we get in, and the clothes go straight into the washing machine. The shoes stay out of the house. Things that we were carrying stay in the sun for a while before they come inside. We all go through the shower. So it's like, there's that routine that's been added to maintain the vigilance of keeping the possible germs outside, because we don't know what we touch is going to have it. And we're door handles, money, shopping bags, coffee cups, like even the barista. We added some milk to William's baby chino, and he said, do you mind lifting the lid off, please? Because, I'm not sure whether I should lift the lid off or whether you should lift the lid off. It's like, all this extra vigilance, it adds pressure. And I must say that I'm feeling pretty shaken up by this morning's routine and trying to keep things normal. Like now, our podcast is on Zoom, and finding the right space to sit down and relax and not interrupt those who are at home and not be interrupted by those who are at home. All of this adds pressure. And I think if we look at it, probably everybody's feeling the same. I mean, so many people I know now are working from home and talking about the logistics about working from home. It's tough. It's really tough. So for me, that was just this morning. I'm not even talking about like the rest of the week prior. That's just this morning, and I've got a whole day to go, and we've got 2 Zoom classes to hold from this afternoon at 4 o'clock, and then one at 6 o'clock. And so, geez, I'm just looking forward to making a space, having a space to do my practice, because I know once I do that, then I'll find a part of me that's going to be grounded and clear and held. I think that's probably the best word I can describe. It's like when I do my daily practice, I feel like hands are holding me, and I think that's vital. It's essential, particularly in these times now. Yeah, so that's me. That was just from 7 o'clock to now. We got the whole day to go yet.
All right, cool. Pierce, do you want to share how it's been for you so far?
Sure. It's actually been interesting in the way that you would think that being in your house and not going out anywhere, you'd be less interrupted, but I actually feel more interrupted than normal. Everyone's clustering, and not even by the people in the house, although that's also somewhat true. But people that probably don't know, we homeschool, so it's actually pretty normal for us to have large periods of our day where all four of us are in the house, the two kids and myself and Ali, my wife. So negotiating that is pretty normal. But right now, I feel like I'm negotiating that with about 6 different groups of people making my phone constantly ping, that all have things of relative urgency. And you can see everyone's reaching out for their lifelines, as to what it is that makes them feel like they're still engaged and they're still being heard and that they're still functional in the world. I've got work colleagues asking me for stuff. Everyone's trying to keep up with the news, and everyone that hears the news wants to know what someone else's opinion is on the news because they want to be sure that they understand it properly. And then obviously Jing Academy is going through massive changes. So there's a lot of communication going on there. But trying to filter out those distractions, the ones that are distractions, and trying to treat things with, I suppose, the appropriate level of urgency. Because right now it feels like we're still finding our feet in this sort of environment and being able to know, all right, that can get put off, that needs to get addressed now, that can get put off. And it really has highlighted to me how when I am putting time aside to do daily practice, and for me, it's Japanese language stuff, the Japanese flute, the shinobue, and doing Tai Chi, all of those things, particularly, and this highlights the difference between doing the language versus doing the flute and doing the Tai Chi, is the flute and the Tai Chi both involve physical engagement that I have to observe. When I'm doing the Tai Chi, I have to see, am I following the principles? Am I moving this way? Am I separating here? Is this moving when it's not supposed to be? Is that not moving when it should be? And then playing the flute, I actually have to pay attention. Am I holding my throat the right way? Is the air coming from here or from here? And all these little things that only I can observe. So I have to dial in on that observation. And it means if I'm being interrupted in that, I'm very aware of it. But it means that I know that I haven't given myself that time yet. And when I do give myself that time, I know that it's happened. Like, it's very easy to tell whether I've really achieved that moment of focus or not. And today I got up and did foundations, like, before I basically did anything else. No, that's a lie. I put coffee on first, but that's a priority. And then I did foundations to make sure I gave myself some of that time early and got in my body, and it really made a big difference, I think. And I find that one thing that is actually giving some routine to the days that are a bit weird right now is sort of planning out that opportunity. I need to give myself some daily practice here. Ali needs to do her daily practice. I need to make sure she's not being interrupted there if I can avoid that. And that's actually kind of helping to make sure we schedule space for each other. But it's, man, strange times.
Yeah, definitely strange times. I've experienced similar things in that I thought working from home would be easier because then I just have, we're in our own spaces and you can just do, but it's not as easy as that, I've noticed, because everything takes time, like legit everything, like even, talking about coffee, that takes 5 minutes or whatever it does. And I quickly realized that I don't actually have more time. I thought I'd have more time to do things that I need to do, but realistically, I got the same amount of time, and that builds on frustration for me as well. It's like, I thought I could do this, but I can't. Got to complete it the next day. But for me, being at home at the moment, working from home, has been a real eye opener for structure in my life. So, when I'm heading out to the academy, there's that travel time, then I get there, then I set up and do the class and then pack away and then come home. There's that structure. But now without that, I find it's very easy for me to, like, I'm at my desk now just to stay here for very long periods of time and get a bit stale and then realize, oh, I haven't done any practice and then I need to go do that. But by that time, I'm feeling so horrible inside that it's like a cycle of things that happen. So I'm quickly learning that structure is important to not overwork myself, just keep adding that practice in, that daily practice, so that I'm just not getting stale, if that makes sense. That's for me this week. I'm sure something else comes up tomorrow, but right now that's on top of my mind. Every day I'm waking up going, all right, what can I do now between this time, before lunch or before breakfast or after breakfast, have that practice time and just trying to live the day through. Yeah. All right. Okay, well, we speak about daily practice often, which we already are starting to. How has daily practice helped you guys, including myself, through these challenging times?
Well, yesterday was particularly, I think every day is really stressful at the moment. But yesterday, I've got I've got moments that kind of shadow all the stressful days before that. I didn't get to practice at all. So this is an interesting one, because now I'm finding that with all of the pressure, my body and my brain needs more sleep. Normally I function quite well on 5 hours and then have a little nap during the day. But I need a good 6.5 hours solid sleep to feel like I've recharged. And so yesterday, when my alarm went off at 5, I thought, no, I'm lying in bed. I need to keep going and get some more sleep before the day starts. And when I did that, of course, it's a roll-on effect. It means I didn't start my Yilus early in the morning, and then there's the get everyone breakfast and out the door, and then we do the day's activities, daycare, school drop-off, all that stuff, shopping, pay bills, yada, yada, yada. I had this huge list, and all the way through working through my list, I kept feeling really anxious. I felt anxious and frustrated and very, I focused isn't the word. It was like I have a list in my head and I needed to follow that step by step. And I kept saying to myself, oh, it's all right to feel anxious. It's all right to feel scared. We'll get to do some Yilus. This is what we'll do together. Once we get home and we've gone through the enter the house routine and we've got stuff put away, we'll leave the house with some lunch. We'll head up to the local coffee shop, and instead of making coffee, we'll buy a coffee to support local business, because those guys are doing it just as tough as we are. And then we'll go to the park and we'll do 12 Yilus, and nothing else will happen. Like, that is the routine. Doesn't matter if the phone rings, it doesn't matter if the emails are urgent. Like, there's so much urgency around, and I get what you're saying, Pierce. It's like everybody's reaching out to kind of knock on the door and tap, tap, tap. Are you guys still there? Like, tap, tap, tap. It's that interruption. And I just kept saying to myself yesterday, keep going, keep going. It's all right to be scared. It's all right to feel anxious. This will be over soon. We'll just get through this, and then we'll go back. We'll have lunch. We'll do Yilus, and nothing else will matter. That's the important thing for you. No one else can actually interrupt that. And I went opposite my local park here. There is a family, I think, from Tibet. Anyway, they have all of these Tibetan flags. I think it's Tibet, and they are dressed in their red gowns all the time, and they're very quiet, very lovely people. So I'm practicing my yilus, and I could just feel all that pressure just disappear. Every yilu I did, it just got less and less and less and less. And the interesting thing was, as that anxiety started to leave, other things were coming in. So I was feeling the gratitude of having my family safe and we're all together. I felt grateful and satisfied that we're prepared as best we can be for a lockdown or for schools to close. We're talking within the family about what's going to happen with school and stuff. So that's an ongoing conversation. Like all of the safety and security, it's like I was describing before, like I felt like I was being held. All of that started coming in. It was almost like, it's almost like my cup is my vessel is a certain volume. And when it's filled with anxiety and fear, that there was no other space for anything else. And as I was doing my yilus, all of that was just draining out. And as that drained out, it gave space for all of the good stuff to come in. And then by the time I got to the 10th yilu, I had 2 more to go. I then had the space to just check the time because I was going to pick up Isabella from school. And then realized that that neighbor in his red gowns started looking at me from his front door. And he was kind of tilting his head, looking, and then he eventually put his sandals on and he came over. But he didn't come to talk to me. He came over kind of, I think, to be in the space. And then he went and sat quietly under a tree and just did his thing and watched me a little bit and did his thing and watched me a little bit. So it was like this, we're kind of meeting without the formal hellos and stuff. So that was really pleasant. It was like kind of my community. It was like my community was growing. And so then I went off and picked Isabella up, and I felt so much clearer. Well, I felt like I normally feel after those 12 yilus. And then it was prepare for dinner and then prepare for our Zoom gathering with the other instructors and the leadership team. So for me, your question is, how is the daily practice affecting me? Well, what I'm noticing is that my usual pattern, when I reflect back to how I used to deal with pressure, similar to this in that there's a real timeline and things had to be done by a certain time and bills had to be paid and all that sort of stuff. What I ended up doing was I had to overindulge in things that made me feel comfort, like pastries and desserts, like 2 or 3 coffees a day, like buying takeout, eating out more regularly. And it kind of made me feel like I was feeding some part of me that was not just my hunger. Needless to say, that never was sustainable. That isn't sustainable, because you end up eating more than you need, and spiking with things that stimulate, and then things that relax, and then go back to things to stimulate, and then go back to things to relax because you can't sleep, and all this sort of roller coaster ride. Now with my daily practice, and it's week 111 this week, I'm practicing 100 yilus a week. That's taken over. So I'm really pleased that I stepped out of the pattern of using external things to help manage my internal turmoil. And now I use my body and join my mind to acknowledge my emotions, and that helps manage my internal turmoil. So that's what I'm noticing now. What about you, Pierce?
Daily practice is definitely. I actually think the emotional check-in that we associate with doing daily practice through Jing has been something that I've had another level of appreciation for now. Is that normally when we post in our like Facebook community groups and so forth, it's a reminder to do, mad, sad, glad, scared, check in with yourself. And they talk about issues that come up with sort of cabin fever and all this sort of stuff around isolation. And it's a very common, it's such a confusing time emotionally, that I think that having the reminder of that link between the emotional check-in and doing your daily practice is really helping to stay on top of how my actions and responses are being affected and sort of moderated by what my background emotions are and what they're connected to, and whether the way that I'm reacting now is connected to what's happening in front of me, or whether it's connected to how I feel generally, and I'm letting that kind of bleed into something unrelated. I'm finding that to be really useful as a mechanism to stay on top of that. And that I know that having in my mind the concept that I have my 3 kinds of daily practice that I'm going to be sorting through and trying to have those done at certain times, that's all linked in the concept to me with doing that emotional check-in. And I know that by doing that a few times, and then when I feel frustrated, I haven't got to do my practice yet, it makes me think about, okay, so that's how I'm feeling right now. I'm feeling in a state right now where if I don't get to do that for myself, I'm feeling frustrated. That doesn't mean that I should drop everything and say, okay, nope, that's it, it's happening now. But at least it means I know that if I'm getting something that interrupts me now, or something I have to deal with, I'm very aware of that background influence, and I can kind of check my own responses and reflect on how I'm acting, and help to moderate that. And it made me think just last night with Ging in a previous podcast, talking about martial arts as the idea of conflict, managing conflict rather than necessarily fighting. And I feel very much like having that ability to bring myself inside my body with my practice, and to check in with myself emotionally and see how that's affecting what I'm capable of and how I'm acting in response to external stress. That's the big thing for me right now. We talk a lot in our household about cooperation or conflict, and whether what you're doing is increasing cooperation or increasing conflict. And right now, bumping up on conflict is very common, and having all the tools that you can to try to moderate that is very useful. So I think that's filling a valuable space for all of us.
I relate to that. This week, 2 weeks, just from COVID and then the news, breaking news and all that updates and stuff, could definitely feel the fear and anxiety in the household. Not necessarily me, but just in the household, my grandparents, my mum, my sister. And I noticed I was able to process, it appears you're talking about conflict, I was processing those vibes. No one was angry at each other, but you could just feel it. And I was starting to feel that. And I was noticing that I'd doing this because it felt like everything rushed and my chest was beating really fast. My heart was beating really fast. And noticing that, for me, I felt like a quick check-in to go, how am I feeling? Having that ability to go, I'm okay. I'm glad, I'm excited. These aren't my emotions, but I'm just feeling the vibes of them, and not to be triggered by those, but understand if it's not me, then what is it? And then noticing how everyone's reacting. I say, okay, everyone's a bit. So then, I don't do things to trigger them, because they're at that state. I can see and I can feel that. And I definitely feel like that daily practice, because I check into myself so often, that I have these signs that I can tell, if it's not me, then what is it, rather than making it's all about me and then not knowing what to do with that. So Even then, I turn to my practice to check in a little bit more. Is it actually me? And then practice, process, get into my body, like you were saying, Piers, and then go from there. Having that ability to do that, it's really tricky. You guys have anything to add to that?
Can I just say, in my opinion, from a self-defense perspective, when you look at a lot of materials, different schools, different approaches, so much of it is about awareness. And, Sifu talks about trying to avoid the fight and, the fighting without fighting that people talk about. Well, so much of that is awareness of how people are acting, how people are responding, knowing how you're feeling, knowing what they're putting up there, what that vibe is. Are they angry, or do they seem like they're scared? Do they seem like they're frustrated? How can I speak to them in a way that's and that's the vast majority of de-escalation that I do in my professional role as a transit officer. I'm known to be particularly good at verbal de-escalation. Like, people ask me my approach, it's been proven, I get thanked afterwards for, you really reined that situation in. That was going to go pear-shaped, but you managed to bring it around. And the vast majority of that is from identifying how that person's feeling and not latching onto that. If they're angry, I can't just become angry in response. I need to figure out what I can do to help their anger. I need to figure out what I can do to help their fear, to get them to the point where they can cooperate with me instead of having the conflict going on and on and on. Because I can have the conflict and I can win the conflict in the vast majority of circumstances, but that's not the point. The point is to resolve it. And like you said, saying something, that thing of that awareness of what's the emotion that's around me, what's that feeling, and where's it coming from? Is it mine? How do I need to act, or how can I address what other people are putting out? I think that's such a valuable skill that's underrated. I mean, it's empathy at its core, right?
Yeah, exactly. Sifu.
Yeah, I'll go further to say that what we're all talking about isn't an ability. Because when we say it's an ability, it sounds like others may not have this ability. I truly believe we all are born with this ability to empathize. The daily practice is actually a mechanism. There's no magic in the Tai Chi. I often say that. There's no magic in Tai Chi. There's no magic in Kung Fu. What happens when we engage with it becomes magical. So it's a mechanism. And it's like, I could have, I love tech, right, and gadgets, and I could have like a Sony A9 camera sitting on the shelf. But unless I pick it up and use it with photographic skills, it's just a really expensive camera to be sitting up on the shelf, or I could carry it around. But still, I actually have to engage with it and use my skills. And then once I do that, like a very, very close friend of mine, Brett Tanner Gibson, he's a master of photography. It can give him any camera and he'd be able to create a masterpiece from what he sees. And I think that's really what's important, that it's not that our Tai Chi is better and it's not that our Kung Fu is better. It's actually that we engage with it. And I truly believe that it is simply a mechanism that all martial arts, I think, this is my belief, that all martial arts really were born from a need to avoid conflict. So there's this need to protect ourselves. We're going to protect ourselves as opposed to destroy the other. That, I don't believe, is the true purpose of martial arts. That actually is just fear acting out and using something to quell my fear. So if I destroy my enemy, there is no enemy. So it's kind of like, it's the same. So Piers, you probably get this, when our kids are acting out and they're absolutely going off their dial, there's probably a part of us, I know it's part of me, that really wants to just say, go outside, I can't deal with you right now. When you've thought about this, and you're saying this to a 5-year-old, right? When you've thought about this and you've realized what you can calm down, then come back in. It's like, what the hell is that? Like, how do you get a 5-year-old to understand what they've done? But that, in actual fact, is just the natural human instinct of, I can't deal with it, so I've got to get rid of it. right? Which is where I believe a lot of our social issues come from, where, you know, drug addiction and alcoholism and domestic violence, all of these things have a very close affinity to the inability to deal with conflict, the inability. So I just want to get rid of it. So I'll drink something, eat something, shoot something, or hit something to make it stop, just shut up, just stop. And then I'll feel better. The problem is when that all wears off, it all comes back, right? So then we get into this locked in cycle. So I see it actually as a mechanism. We have a mechanism that we use, and you know, everybody has the ability to be empathetic. We just have to find a way to tap into that. And then the world's going to be a far better place if more of us are able to access a mechanism that enables us to be kind to ourselves and therefore kind to others. And we then become measured because we know, like you say, we're empathizing with the other person, because we can feel and acknowledge and recognize the emotion that is coming our way, and we talk our ways through that. And that's really just connecting with another human being.
Yep. I'm just thinking a lot of times or examples that I've done that, process some conflict, and we're talking about conflict not necessarily as punching and kicking, but just when something's triggered us, and the times where I've processed that, and that's it. I've just processed that, and then a resolution or not, it comes out from that. There's no logic to it. That's what I'm thinking of.
Well, I mean, I think the ability to go through, or having a way to go through and process it, it's oftentimes you realize you were fighting for a resolution that didn't need to exist. Like, actually, as big a deal that this situation was ongoing, or that someone's opinion was what it was, or all of that stuff. We feel like we want to get a win and we want a resolution sometimes when it's just not even necessary. And I think sometimes that you're right, taking that moment to process it through and go, what is it in actuality? What was it? How did I feel? What were they saying? What were they doing? Do I actually need to change this? Do I actually need to have some outcome? Or can I just drop it and move on? And sometimes you can and sometimes you can't, but at least taking that check helps you to realize whether you need to carry it with you or not.
Yeah. So for the listeners, do you guys have any, I want to say tips, but not tips, but that sort of thing in terms of, a tough time right now? I mean, we've shared a lot from our experiences, and I guess they'll get something from that. But is there one thing that you'd say or give advice to how to keep safe and whatnot in this difficult time?
Yeah, I do. There's this little, I don't know, what do you call it? It's an acronym, isn't it? The first letter of words, is that right? That's an acronym. Anyway, there's this 3 words that were shared with me some time ago, and that's acknowledge, feel, choose, AFC, acknowledge, feel, choose. And it's in that order. And for me, it's acknowledge what I'm feeling right now. Step 2, feel it through. Step 3, choose my next course of action. So acknowledge, feel, choose. Often what happens is I hear conflict escalates because we get locked into logic and who's right and who's wrong, and we discard the emotions behind it, and that's when we escalate conflict, and sometimes even have outcomes that we rather not have ever experienced. So for people out there, if you're trying to find something that's going to help, acknowledge, feel, choose, AFC, acknowledge your feelings you're feeling. 2, feel them through. Feel them through means take your attention to that feeling, and all emotions have a physical response in our body. So you may not even know what the emotion is. And when I first started working on this, I had no idea what my emotions were. I thought I did, but I didn't. And for example, here, when I get angry, I get an angry lump. The base of my hairline on the left side of my neck grows a lump. And sometimes the lump appears and I had no idea that I was frustrated about something. And then other times when I get raging angry, I then go, oh, geez, there is that lump. That was right. I'm really triggered by this. So the feeling something through is actually going to the sensation in the body and just being with it. Some people would say they get more comfort too when you're being with it, is to breathe with a rhythm, nice slow breathing with a rhythm, and just embrace that feeling. Could be tightness of the chest, like Jhung, you were saying, there was this tightness of your chest that you were feeling earlier the week. It could be numbness of feet. It could be thumping in the head. People would talk about having headaches and stuff like that when big things are happening. Feel that through, and when that dissipates, in other words, when that feeling starts to kind of get to a point where it doesn't seem to have this overriding control over us, then what is left often is clarity. Then you can choose. Choose what's kind to you, kind to everyone else. And that's your course of action.
Cool. Pierce?
I think there's going to be a lot. It's going to be a roller coaster for lots of people, and particularly with the fact that a lot of our interaction that's taking place now is going to be through social media. Social media has its own problems with expression and problems with people posting things without enough context or without an awareness of why they think that they're saying what they're saying. And it actually makes me think of when we talk about Tai Chi applications and having the fight in one area, and that then the most useful thing isn't always to push back where the fight is, but to approach something from a different area, from a different angle. And I think sometimes we're going to be seeing messages out there, people's opinions, people's reports, things that are true or false. And we're going to probably have feelings rising up that we want to fight against things that people are doing or saying. And sometimes I think that step back and that check and thinking about what is it that they're showing emotionally, potentially here? What is it? What's more to the story? And where's the area that I can try to be part of it? If we're all a community and we're trying to recognize, I think this is a big opportunity for us to all see and recognize how we value our personal connections and the similarities that we all have. Hopefully this can be a bizarre experience that brings people together in their commonalities rather than drives them apart from their differences. And I think trying to recognize those commonalities and trying to help people when they do something you disagree with, trying to genuinely help rather than just battle with people. And that goes in the home and in social media and any interactions you might have in the shop, in the toilet paper aisle. Like, we got to be aware of this, and we got to remember this is the community we're building, maintaining, staying in, and it needs to look how we need it to look, I guess. I don't know if that made sense. I hope it did.
I got the gist of it. No, it's all good. It's all good. For me, I just get my best reflections, my best self from my practice. So if you guys have a practice out there, then keep it up. Even in these hard times, I've felt like I've got no time for anything. I just got to do the next task and just keep going. But you still got to take care of yourself. And we spoke about earlier how it's not an ability, but it's a mechanism, and what we get, how we engage with it is what we get out of it, sort of thing. So keep up what you love to do and not give it up in this time, because this is the time where you need it the most. And I have a final quote if you guys are happy to end the episode, which you can make mean whatever you want. But it's from Instagram, and it's from the page called Positive Mindset Daily. And it says, when you start taking care of yourself, you start to feel better, you start to look better, and you start to attract better. It all starts with you.
Cool. I like that.
Nice. All right. Well, hang on. Unmute, Pierce. You were saying?
I just said sounds good. That's
Okay, cool.
That's all.
Sorry. Cool. All right. See if it's muted. Unmute. All right. Was there anything final words for you guys want to share with the podcast today?
No, thanks for having me and checking in, and having that time together has been great. And I think it's actually a really good example of how it can be easy to drop things that you would value otherwise. I felt very much like, oh no, time pressure. Maybe I shouldn't have said I would. Maybe I should have pulled out. But I'm just really glad I was here. I was really glad I got to talk with you, gentlemen. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Cool.
Thank you for being on the show.
Thanks, Pierce.
Any final words, Dad?
No. Well, yes.
Mate.
It's really hard not being able to see you in person and to be able to give you a hug. It's really hard. And if we're going to be locked down for another 5.5 months, wow, we have to all remember to hug each other when we're at home, because it's going to be really easy for us to forget that we thrive on touch. So I'm having trouble just seeing you on the screen every day, but I know that this will end and I can give you the biggest cuddle and not let you go when it's all done.
Yeah, I've am I muted? No. I've noticed that I've turned to, with anyone that I'm getting contact with, to FaceTime or video call. Like, that's just the go-to button now. It's no longer just call. It's just that, because we're all missing that. All right. Thanks, Dad. Thanks, Piers.
You're welcome.
Depending on your work schedule next week, do another one. Sorry, you're muted. What was that? What?
Who knows?
Okay, cool.
Anything could change.
Yeah. No worries.
I'll hustle someone else into getting on as well.
Yeah, do it. We'll get some more Jing mowers on as well. All right, guys. Thank you for listening to this episode of the FuReel Podcast. Of course, you can listen to it on any platform where podcasts are found. You can watch the full episode. You probably should check out this episode. You've got 3 screens here you're looking at of us, all different locations. It's a good one. And we'll see you in the next episode. Hoo-yah!